What is going on, guys? This is Dan here. Welcome back into the channel and welcome to our first ever Star Wars Sunday. This is something that myself and Walt from Mousetrap have been planning for so long, and it's really exciting because episode 9 is coming out in December. So we thought we had a great idea of let's review one Star Wars film once a month leading up to episode 9 in December. And I've got a very special guest as well. But first and foremost, I'd like to introduce the person who will be joining me every single month leading up to episode 9, and that is Walt from Mouse Talk. Thank you so much again for joining me on my channel, and I'm super excited for this.
Oh, Dan, we're going to have a great time with it. Absolutely. Very, very happy to be here. This is going to be epic. I think we're going to have a great time with it. We're going to get a lot of feedback from everybody, including our special guests each month. And then everybody in the chat. Thank you to everybody in the chat. And I agree, very special guest with us this week in Steve from Stevesworld. So we're going to have fun.
Awesome. So welcome, Steve from Stevesworld. Thank you so much. You have been you've been on Disney Fiasco a couple of times. It's been great. And now I think this is something that's really up your street, and you love Star Wars as much as myself and Walt does. So what perfect first guest to have on this episode. So welcome.
I greatly appreciate it. I was extremely honored. You two are two of my favorite people on YouTube. I couldn't be happier to be with you and discussing one of our favorite topics at all, and that is Star Wars in any realm of the scope of things. So I don't care what episode it is. So thank you guys very much.
Awesome. It's our pleasure to have you. We got some amazing people in the chat. First and foremost, I want to give a massive shout out to Donna Jaworski, who donated before the stream started. Thank you so much for donating over on PayPal. I really appreciate it. Our Disney adventures are here. I hope that you had a wonderful time at Walt Disney World. I look forward to seeing you in August. Salute and click. Stacey Rogers, Sherry is here. I hope she had an amazing time on her cruise. Brandy and Dave will be doing something very soon together, so stay tuned for that. D. Anderson Fallen, my power channel, Rob Fuzz, it's good to see you, buddy. Juan Rodriguez, only one Kenobi. I think he's going to be a person who's going to have a lot of impact on this show as well. Liam is here. Let's see who else. The Lucky Minute. The Laser Cat is here, Noah is here, Disney Mitch is here. So many wonderful people. Stacey Rogers, it's great to see everybody. So today we are going to be looking at the one that's in chronological order started it all, episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And this one is interesting. Hey Dougie, what is up, my friend? Good to see Dougie in the chat as well. It is going to be an interesting episode. Now, what's really interesting about episode 1, The Phantom Menace, is that it's been 20 years since The Phantom Menace. And Walt brought this up earlier. And 20 years have gone past since The Phantom Menace. Now, I don't really remember the hype around this movie. I don't remember a lot about this movie when it was released because I was a toddler. But I'm sure that you two have a really good, fond memory of when this released. A big welcome to Jambo from Magical News Live. Good to see you, Nick. And Mr. Fulton, Mr. Caitlin Moraz, welcome as well. So I want to get Walt's take and then Steve's take on what it was like 1999, The Phantom Menace, after waiting, I think it was 18 years, something like that, since The Return of the Jedi. What was it like around the movie theaters when The Phantom Menace was released?
Well, it was a big deal, Dan, because first and foremost, Return of the Jedi was 1983. So we're talking 16 years later. So the epic 4, 5, and 6 had already gone. Everybody fell in love with them. And now here we are 16 years later, and the backstory of all of these characters is finally going to be told. So the build-up was incredible. It was an incredible time. Everybody was so excited. Massive amounts of marketing, media, you name it. Even for 1999, 20 years ago, for what it was at that time, everybody was so excited. I was so excited. It may have been 16 years since we saw any type of Star Wars. So to be back in that genre, in that story, it was super exciting. It was such an incredible time.
Awesome. And Steve, what was it like for you growing up and hearing that announcement that Star Wars was going to be back with The Phantom Menace?
It was pretty exciting. I think I was born when episode 5 came out, somewhere around that point in time. So I didn't get to experience Star Wars as it came out. I didn't even know what it was until I was probably 6 or 7 or 8 years old. But it's something I fell in love with immediately. And I personally love when, especially now with all these different shows, when they come out 20 years later, have the same cast, have the same story to them. I just really enjoy that kind of story when you have that big gap there. It makes you fall in love with it all over again. So when they announced that the Phantom Menace was coming out, it was just an elated sense that came over my entire body, because I can remember sitting in the theater the day it opened. I was getting ready to graduate high school, I think. And I can remember that first note that's iconic in all Star Wars movies. And when it hit, I remember the chills going from head to toe across my whole body. So it was something that I was extremely looking forward to.
Awesome. I just want to give a quick reminder to everybody now. I know Star Wars is not everybody's cup of tea. Star Wars is a very controversial, because there's nothing more controversial than Star Wars. So if you have an opinion, if you have something in the chat, feel free to say it, but let's keep everything still PG friendly. No cursing or swearing, anything like that. We are going to be talking about things that we like, we dislike, especially with things like the Phantom Menace, where it's not maybe one of our favorites. But if this is one of your favorites, don't be offended. This is just our opinions of Star Wars, but I would love to hear your opinions as well. So yeah, 1999. Just for me, I was 5 years old, and I watched when I was a kid all the time. I know Walt has these as well. The original VHS special edition Star Wars trilogy with A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. I watched those all the time, and I just really enjoyed the original trilogy. And then continuing on, I had the VHS for the Phantom Menace, and as a child, you don't really kind of get everything. You don't understand a lot of the stuff that's going on. All I remember at the time when I was a child was watching Darth Maul cut up some Jedi. That's what I remembered as a child. But growing up, kind of watching the film, analyzing the film, the Phantom Menace has not aged well, I don't think. I think it's a film that has got quite tired, and which is kind of strange, because you can see a lot of video footage of people coming out of the Phantom Menace loving it. Like, loving it, absolutely loving it. But it's really over time that it's become maybe a lot of people's least favorite. Was that obviously I was not around back then when, to understand, was it even that big of a hype? But when people came out of the movie theater, did you get the consensus that a lot of people really loved the Phantom Menace? We'll go the same order.
I did, absolutely. Right. I think what you're going to have with Star Wars is for some, and actually not even some, I think for many, you'll see that Star Wars can almost do no wrong. They're going to love Star Wars because they just love Star Wars within reason. So you've got some of your main characters from the original 3 that are going to be in there, and then the new story with the new characters as well. So yes, tons of people came out of that movie theater loving the movie. But I think you hit it right on the head. I think it hasn't aged well. When you look at, like, for instance, not everybody goes by this, but this is just a kind of a barometer. On Rotten Tomatoes, it scores 54. Right. Which by far is the lowest overall rating of any of the Star Wars movies on Rotten Tomatoes. But coincidentally enough, for audience score, it's not the lowest, which I thought was very interesting. There are actually a couple that are lower for audience score, and we'll get to those when we get to those. But so it's kind of it's close. I think the audience scored it at 59. So although when it first came out, people were, I think what it was, it's that initial excitement that, oh my gosh, Star Wars is back. Yep. We're finally getting the prequels to find out about all the stuff that happened before our beloved characters. Oh my gosh, we're so happy. But you're right, Dan. I think over time, it really hasn't, it's not like a fine wine. It hasn't aged well.
And Steve, do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I remember there were a lot of people that dressed up in the movie theater when we went in, and when we came out of that, everybody was so ecstatic. There were people having lightsaber battles out in the parking lot, and there wasn't a single person that had a negative thing to say. And I think as time goes on, with the enhancement of all the new computer graphics that we can see and the new things that they can do, when you look back at that movie, some of the things in it were kind of cheesy.
Right.
They didn't quite, add up to to our standards that would be today. But I still find myself, I'm one of the oddballs that loved every one of them, and I still find myself watching it, loving every minute of it. But I also, to me, it has great visual effects to it, and it's aesthetically pleasing, and it's where the story began. So that part of that to me means a lot more than some of the corniness of the movie. So
right. I could definitely see that, and obviously I didn't see it in the movie theaters, but you can kind of tell, what it was like back in those days, and how I think coming off the film on a high after what they saw in the final act was a big thing that helped them when they came out of the movie theater. Now, I took a lot of notes before this stream, and I want everybody to, after this stream, go check out another YouTuber who's got 1 million subscribers, who talks about a lot of different films. He does a great review on The Phantom Menace called Chris Stuckmann. I put his link in the description box down below. He really breaks down The Phantom Menace and talks about things that are really great and things that are really not so great. So a lot of the notes that I've taken down are taken from him, and some things I agree and some things I don't agree. And what we're going to do, we're going to literally work our way through the film, act to act to act, and discuss what we like and what we didn't like. So let's start off with the beginning. Let's start off what happens right at the start, and we get a crawl, which I think was one of the most important things to happen. If they didn't do a crawl after waiting so long since the Return of the Jedi, I think there would have been riots. I think the same thing was said when The Force Awakens was released. There had to be a crawl. And the thing what The Phantom Menace had to do was tell a new story and to kind of get that backstory of Darth Vader. And this was kind of like the start of something that's kind of, where did all these characters come from? Now, for me, the whole beginning, let's just talk about literally the first part where they're on the spaceship. I like the fact they used a rebel cruiser, a Republic cruiser, and a separatist ship, because it kind of mimics the Empire and the rebels in episode 4. You got the grandeur of the separatists, the grandeur of the Empire with their Star Destroyer, and the rebel cruiser and the Republic kind of cruiser in episode 1. It's kind of like, right, we're into a Star Wars movie, let's go. And we firstly get introduced to Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor. What do you think of this casting choice? Let's start with Liam Neeson. Taken, non-stop, Liam Neeson, I will find you, I will kill you guy. What did you think when you first saw him on screen as a Jedi?
Well, for me, I'm fine with the choice. I thought he did a very good job as Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yep.
I think it was an excellent casting. He was very good. He reminded me of a Jedi, someone who's going to be very intelligent, very understanding, yet very powerful if he has to be, understands how to get out of trouble if there's trouble, and can be a teacher as well. I thought he was a great choice. I can see him as a Jedi. Absolutely. Yes. Right.
And Ewan McGregor?
Absolutely. Good choice there as well. I'll be honest with you. At first, when he's the young Obi-Wan Kenobi, I wasn't sure.
Me too.
As the movies went on, he nailed the role.
Yep.
I like him better as he got older, but he was very good as a young Obi-Wan as well. He's a great choice.
He looks very young in this role. He looks he had no facial hair, very short back. I mean, the Jedi Council must have great barbers because he was very clean cut. I think he just looked, for me, just looked a little bit out of place, but I did like the cast of Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor. Steve, what do you think of both of these guys?
Oh, they're two of my favorite actors, so I was really excited to hear when they were playing it. And starting with Liam Neeson, he does always have that lead suspense role, action packed, and I think he's an actor that we expect like the main role to be out of. So for him to be in a role that had guidance and leadership, I was totally on board with him being, and I absolutely loved the way he looked in the movie. I thought he fit the part perfect, and that was a whole new character created from something we knew. Then so that fit the role perfectly. And then to take an iconic role like Obi-Wan Kenobi, when I'm the same as you, when I saw Ewan McGregor's look to start with, I questioned it, but he was one of my favorite actors. But by the time, like you said, as the movies went on, I thought he nailed the part pretty good. I thought by the time we got to episode 3, which you get to it later, but I thought he had really embodied the entire role for Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I did not have a problem with either of those two being cast the way they were.
Which is interesting. And now I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant. People need to stop about this whole Will Smith genie thing, because Ewan McGregor had to do the same thing for Sir Alec Guinness as Ben Kenobi in the original trilogy. Because you know what? For me, Ewan McGregor did a fantastic job in the prequels. I think he performed very well. I think he did a great job from episode 1 up until episode 3. And to do that after taking over a role from Alec Guinness, who is, you know, one of the best actors of his generation, was a very big thing to do. So I was all down for Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson. Now, what's interesting about Liam Neeson, do you guys know how he accepted the role?
No, not at all.
Okay, so Liam Neeson, Qui-Gon Jinn, who appeared in one Star Wars movie, accepted the role of Qui-Gon Jinn without reading one word of George Lucas's script.
Wow.
And I think if he had read the script, I think we would have had a different Qui-Gon Jinn, knowing where this was going. You know, because Liam Neeson, you know, he likes to be in franchises. You know, he loves the Taken franchise. He likes going into these action franchises. He had no idea he was going to get killed off at the end of the movie. By the way, just a little bit of a heads up. All these Star Wars reviews and things will have major spoilers. So if you've never seen episode 1, sorry, there's a spoiler. But you're going to hear many more. But Qui-Gon Jinn dies at the end, and I think Liam Neeson did not read about it before he accepted the role. Now, look, I am no actor. I'm pretty sure if you were about to accept a role, you would read the script first. I mean, you're no dummy.
I would hope so. But it's Star Wars, so I get it. I mean, I understand. Look, the reputation precedes itself. When you think Star Wars, you think automatic hit. It's going to make tons of money. There's going to be sequels. Right. So I understand that, but you're right. I mean, usually you want to read the script first.
It is quite interesting. And also, because Liam Neeson is 6'4", I read that they had to build additional height on the sets because he was so tall. Like and they didn't expect him to, you know, they didn't expect that the sets were. They didn't know that they needed to get them higher. So I think it was a very interesting way of incorporating an actor into a movie role like that, because, you know, Liam Neeson he's a very peculiar actor. So, but I think he did a great job. And I think Ewan McGregor, again, did a great job, especially introducing them into this movie. I was like, right, we're getting going. The smog comes out in this negotiation room, and you finally have the first kind of tiny little fight between the droids and the Jedi. For me, this is kind of where things for me start to go a little bit downhill, because although the stormtroopers couldn't hit anything in any of the previous movies, they were still human beings. They were still like kind of like they felt quite they had a presence to them. The droids had no, like, there's nothing. They were just like tin cans. You could have just knocked them over like really easy. There was no. I felt like the Jedi, especially in the prequels, had no real danger against these droids because they were so easily killed. You know, there was no skill. They could just knock them over and bang, another droid is dead. And I just feel like it's just kind of like, why the main villains in this movie is Nute Gunray and these battle droids.
Yeah, Viceroy. Yeah.
I mean, as a big main antagonist, you got a weird alien guy with lots and lots of droids. For me, it just doesn't work for me. I don't get any real investment into the villains. We'll talk about another villain later on in a bit, but we're still talking about the first act. What do you think about the introduction of, you know, these two sides of the droids and the the two Jedi, the kind of just before they get to Naboo?
Well, I think the introduction is fine. I tend to agree with you. I think the problem with that is you want bad guys that seem like they have a chance of winning. And you knew that with these bad guys, these droids and things of that nature, it just wasn't there. You knew they were going to go right through them. I agree. The stormtroopers are much more relatable and fearful in a lot of ways. I think maybe because they're real life. I don't know. But the droids themselves, see, we're programmed, no pun intended, to think of droids as being the sidekicks, because that's what we've always known. So when you're putting them in as the major part of the bad guys to fight you, it just doesn't, at least for me, it didn't click. I'm like, well, there's got to be a bigger bad guy that's coming that's going to fight them. And it's not. It's always these droids, and it just never really registered as a serious threat, in my opinion, for these guys. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah, there's no, and we'll talk about more of threats later on. Steve, what about the introduction of these villains?
Yeah, I agree with you guys too. And the problem with the droids, in my opinion, is there's so many of them. There wasn't anything that really stood out with amongst them. So there wasn't that epic bad guy yet to start out with. And then the problem I had with Newt Gunray and the Viceroy, they were really just such cowards. Especially when you hear, they're talking about their master is going to be upset and this, that, and the other, and they want to run and retreat. You can't take an epic bad guy as somebody who's going to be a coward and retreat too. So they were hard to relate to as being a main focus of a villain. But overall, I still enjoyed it. But yeah, they were hard to take seriously.
And I think like that comes back to, we're talking about things, what we would change. Now, a great example of a villain who's really on his last ropes, who wants to please their masters, the people controlling them, is in Casino Royale, which is a James Bond film, and you have Mads Mikkelsen as Le Chiffre. Now, he's trying to pay back the gangsters, and he's on his last ropes, and he'll do whatever it takes to pay the money, so to win a gambling game, and he'll go to violence, whatever. But the Viceroys and Newt Gunray, they just want to run away. I mean, that's not a great villain. They just want to, they're very much cowards. If it was me, I'd be like, hey, they're a Jedi on this shit. I'm going to send every single droid that I have to go and get these guys. So only one Kenobi says, important point, George Lucas deliberately wanted those droids to look goofy and ineffective against Jedi, hence why Stormtroopers was used later down the line, as they're more effective than the droids, which I think is a great point. I think we'll come on to that point when we talk about Attack of the Clones. But, George Lucas's decisions in these prequels can be very much discussed in a whole separate video. Right. Right, this is going to probably take a while. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, or let's talk about the big stupid rabbit, and that is Jar Jar Binks. Well, look, everything can be said about this thing, okay? Whether this was a product of George Lucas's imagination, or if it was, something he thought of in a dream, we have no idea. But this is my take on what the Gungans and Jar Jar should have been, right? So let's start off, right? Qui-Gon Jinn saves Jar Jar from getting run over by a tank. And he goes, now get out of here, right? He says to Jar Jar, now get out of here. It's dangerous. Get out of here. I just wish Jar Jar had just gone off and just left, okay? And we didn't need the whole, no, Misa, stay. We need a life debt. Doobie-doobie-doobie-doo. Like it's just, we didn't need that comedy effect. Because we already were going to get introduced to R2-D2 and C-3PO in this film. I don't feel we needed that kind of comedic effect. Now, people will say, wait, Jar Jar has a big role in this movie because he kind of fought against the droids. I would say, right, if you want these Gungans, don't make them goofy. Don't make them just all silly and that they need to pay off a debt, whatever. I thought of a great idea of, instead of having the Gungans all silly, have them be like Amazonis, Aquaman, Atlantis warriors, right? Like they are invading your planet, right? It's kind of like Aquaman mixed with Wonder Woman and their civilizations. These are going to be some bad freaking fish people with ultimate weapons, and they are going to take down these droids, and they mean business. And when Jar Jar becomes the hero, the ultimate warrior, he becomes a representative in the Senate. That's what I was thinking, instead of this whole funny thing, because I just don't think it worked. This whole funny thing with Jar Jar doesn't work for me. It's just complete unnecessary, very annoying. Now, I understand there are people who really like Jar Jar. That's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that, you know, your opinion is wrong. That's just my opinion. I just feel the movie would have been better if the Gungans were way more serious, you know, a little bit darker, because I don't feel we needed that comedy effect. That's me ranting.
Well, Dan,
Walt, I would like you to.
Here's what I say when it comes to Jar Jar. I wasn't happy with this movie in any of the supporting characters that they had. Right. Whether it was Jar Jar, I didn't like Boss Nass. I didn't like Watto. I didn't like Sebulba. I didn't like the way they went with any of those supporting characters and creatures. I thought all of them could have been a little bit better. They all seemed to come across comedic almost in every single way. I also didn't like the way they did the voices on those characters. I don't think they did them justice, in my opinion. You're right. It was hard for me to take any of them seriously, and they just didn't. None of those supporting characters was I really happy with, which is too bad, because Boss Nass, the leader of the I guess the Gungans in the you know, underneath the water, could have been a really pivotal character who could have played a big part in the war. Yeah. And
what he does is and that's it.
Well, yeah, it's like, I don't understand why we need that. You know, and Sebulba too, although he was probably the best of the group. There just was something about all these, I don't even want to call them sidekicks, just supporting characters that they had in the movies, that I understand their roles, they just weren't that, and I don't know, effective maybe is the word.
And Stacey Rogers brings up a really great point. And look, I'm not throwing hate at Jar Jar fans. It's just giving my opinion. And Stacey says, but it doesn't say something about that a silly character was able to get into a position like Jar Jar did. Doesn't it show that no matter who you are, you could still become more? And I totally agree.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with that. I feel like anybody can do anything. I really do believe that. But I think in terms of the way George Lucas directed Jar Jar as a character, he could have been way more compelling by being kind of maybe an outsider of the Gungan community. Maybe, you know, instead of being silly as being an outsider, maybe being like, maybe he's done something wrong. Maybe he's, you know, committed a crime, or maybe it just have a little bit of a, you know, I want to know why he was an outsider instead of being all silly. I think for me, I do like the Gungans in this movie, but they could have played a different role to make them more compelling. And that's my opinion. And I think, again, he was a bit too much. Like, he doesn't need to do the whole apple scene where he sticks his tongue out and tries to get the apple, and then Qui-Gon's like, don't do that. And he does it again because everyone wants him to do it again because it's funny. It's not funny. It's just, it's a way of breaking tension. And I don't think it was the wrong time for him. We're skipping ahead to Tatooine, but that's just my opinion on Jar. I want to know what Steve thinks, because maybe Steve has a different opinion. I want to know what other people's opinions are. Okay,
so don't get mad.
Yep. But... No, I'm not going to get mad. Star Wars is all opinion based. It's all going to be controversial, but I'm looking forward to hearing other people's arguments.
I actually enjoy Jar Jar Binks to a certain extent. Now, let me finish that before we get too far back. I don't like. I love the Gungans. I think they were a vital role. I mean, it could have obviously been, you know, like you said, big warriors, things like that. But I actually like the fact that they were underdogs and that they were looked at as inferior, because I think that made for a more important role, that you had, that when they had to join the other forces, they actually had to overcome their differences to become a team to be able to defeat the enemy. And I think to save their planet. And I think I think portraying them as a lesser inferior race of characters was important to be able to throw the underdog story in. Now, with that being said, the way they speak is absolutely ridiculous. They could have done something with that. I liked the look. I didn't mind the clumsiness of Jar Jar. I actually liked that a lot. And again, I think that played a lot to the role of the of making these two factions come together to be able to defeat a common enemy and save their planet. So for me, again, like I said, I enjoyed them, everything except the way they spoke.
Right.
And let me say something real fast, Dan. Sure. The Lucky Minute says in the comments, they say Jar Jar is for the kids. They loved him. I totally get that. I think that's a great point. If that was the purpose of Jar Jar, then I think the point was made. I think maybe we're thinking too adult on this, because maybe the kids did love Jar Jar, and if that's the case, if that was his purpose, then you're right. If the kids loved him, then it was a success. So I want to put that out there. That's a good point by the Lucky Minute. Yes,
and I do agree with what Steve says, and you know, taking out that silliness and kind of thinking of it more as an underdog. I do agree with that a lot. And look, you know, guys, this is all about art. You know, whether we like, you know, it's okay to like something and not like something. That's perfectly fine. We all like different things for different reasons. So if you like Jar Jar, that's perfectly cool. For me, I like the Gungans, but I don't really like the character. But everyone likes different things. Awesome. Now, I just want to bring on a very small scene which kind of affects for me the whole of the movie. And this is what I call wooden walk in the park dialogue. Now, there's a scene where they leave the underwater Gungan hideaway thing, and they are just having a little drive in the countryside in their little boat with a big fish behind them, not having a care in the world. You could have had like the music, you know, the whole like waking up every morning song while they're driving their little car. And I just feel like no one has real incentive, like urgency. There's no real urgency in this movie, right? Like they get, you know, bitten by the fish. And the only thing that happens is like Jar Jar goes, "Oh, uberfish," whatever it is, and the Jedi are just looking at me and just like, it feels like they've just seen a pigeon. Like there's no real like, "Oh no, oh god, there's a fish here. Like what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?" I feel like they're just so relaxed about like the things that wouldn't be so relaxed, and everything is for me such wooden dialogue. And like I feel a lot of people when they speak have very just limited like they don't have much emphasis on anything. Like my women need, like my people need help. Nothing can get through our shields. Like nothing is like never like, you know,
no emotion.
Nothing like no one has any emotion. Like it should be like nothing can get through these shields. Like it needs to. Everything is kind of like we must train the boy. He's too old. You know, it's just like
Qui-Gon had a quote. Qui-Gon had a quote in the movie that said, "The ability to speak does not make you intelligent." So it kind of falls right into that.
It falls right into that, and I think one of the biggest things I didn't like about this film was that there was no excitement in their talking and what is happening around them. Like I said with the droids, the Jedi can easily cut them down with no worries at all. They could have just like seen, oh, there's like a few hundred battle droids. I'm just gonna walk along with my little lightsaber, just go boom, boom, boom. Like they're not worried. Like there's no sense of urgency, there's no emotion, and there's no sense of worry. And I think that's what really annoyed me, especially with this drive through the park underwater scene with Jar Jar, Obi-Wan, and Qui-Gon. And that's just my opinion when I first saw it.
It was filler.
It was filler. Like, why did we need to see 5 different fish in this scene just to go from one place to another?
It was filler, I'm sure.
You know, why can we have a classic Star Wars wipe where it goes, whoop, there's go back to the antagonist, whoop, back, right, we're in Naboo. That's just my opinion on that kind of little scene. And you'll hear me rant a lot on Phantom Menace. And we'll go back to the My People Need Help. But let's head to Naboo. And we get introduced to another main character, and that is Natalie Portman as Princess Amidala. Good choice, bad choice? What do we think?
She's fine. I have no, I've never really thought about who else would I have picked over her. So I can't say that she's a bad choice. I think Natalie Portman is a fantastic actress, by the way. I think she's unbelievable. She does great. In The Professional, when she was young, I think it was The Professional. Yes, she's fantastic in that. She's done, Black Swan, other movies. She's incredible. Of course, she was in Thor, but she's a wonderful choice for this role. Now, maybe again, you can only go with what's given to you in content. You know, you can only go with what's given to you in the script. And her early on, you talk about no emotion. A lot of her scenes, she's like, it's like she's almost like a zombie. And I'm like, is that supposed to be the way she's supposed to be? Or, but then when she's just Padme, there's a little bit more emotion. She's a little bit more down to earth. So I have no problem with her as the part. I think it's a good choice.
Right. And Steve?
I agree with Walt there. She's an incredible actress. I think that just like he said, she played two different parts. She was one person as the Queen, and then one person as Padme. And to change, again, like, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but to be one so stoic and then one, just completely different attitudes. If she didn't look the same on screen, you could have thought she was two different people.
That's what
by
I
the way
was
she
about to
played
say,
the part. So
yeah.
I had no problem with her whatsoever.
I think that's what I think she did a fine job. I think she was good at what she was given by George Lucas, but especially in the first film, I did feel like, every time I watched her on screen, I generally felt like it was two different people. And I did, like, you could have showed me a picture of her as the Queen and a picture of her when she was all dressed in orange when she picked up Anakin on the ship. I thought it was a completely different person. Like, just the way she completely, and I think that's what's. Again, I think there should have been a little bit of an overlap between them both, those two characters, because she needs to stay serious as a queen, but also realize, like, hey, I need to be more down to earth when I talk to Anakin. Dougie says, yep, by all accounts, even the original until a team of editors came in and created a whole new plot out of unused shots and ADR. That is true. And yes, and Dolwood Dad brings up Keira Knightley, who had a very small part, and we'll get to that later on. And let's okay, so they escape Naboo. They cut down a couple more droids, and we get introduced finally to R2-D2, which probably for me was one of the most entertaining parts of the movie, when you see lots of different droids getting shot out of the sky and try and get past the blockade. And I actually think that's kind of a really intriguing idea. Their ship is damaged. In lots of the other Star Wars films, we didn't really see a lot of ships get damaged. The only ship I could really think of that got damaged but was repairable was the Millennium Falcon in Return of the Jedi when they tried to blow up the Death Star. They lost the dish. I think there was some that caught by tractor beams but nothing was really damaged. And I think that was kind of really intriguing. And actually, I kind of found it quite interesting that you can actually see repairs. And I think having this kind of, I know the second and third characters in this movie weren't great, but I think R2-D2 had a decent role in this film. As kind of an introduction to him. Where did he come from? And just to hear those screams from all the droids while they're getting shot, I think was quite entertaining.
I agree 100%. There's nothing like R2-D2 and C-3PO. They are mainstays in all these movies, and they are welcome mainstays at all times. I love each one of those two characters. Are just they are like peanut butter and jelly. Yep. You can't have one without the other. Yep. And I love both of them. So to have them in the films was a plus. And of all the things that George Lucas didn't get right, he got that right. And I will give him that. That was very smart to make sure they were in there. Two of the most beloved characters, in all of Star Wars. Right. So I'm glad they were in it. And I do like that scene, Dan. I agree with you. It's a little bit more intensity to that scene, a little bit more importance. You understand the point of what they're doing there. So I agree.
And just to quickly, before I lose track of this, I think it was kind of like the reason why I like this scene so much was because nothing really happens before then. I'm going to be honest. Like, this is the first half, like the first act of this movie is boring. Like, and I'm going to bring it up how boring the rest of the film for me is. But the first act of this film, what do we see? We see a couple of fish, we see a couple of droids get cut open, and we see Jar Jar. And I just don't think there was really anything punchy and exciting until this scene, when they try and escape. And I was like, right, now we're getting into something. We're seeing, weirdly, not any actors. We're seeing CGI droids doing something. And that's the most entertaining thing for me that's happened so far. Steve, I'm intrigued to hear what you think of this scene.
No, I liked it too. It's one of the first real exciting scenes, and I'm a big believer in the fact that you have to set up a story to tell it right. So I think the first act of the story is telling the story. And a lot of people do find that boring. So I like getting introduced to all the people and finding out the backgrounds of everything. And so it gives us a place to go. But this is the first real action of the movie. It brings back one of the iconic original characters in R2-D2. And it's just a great scene. And this is before he's met C-3PO technically. So it's one of those scenes where you see how he became who he was. He's a daredevil of the two robots. He's the daredevil versus the coward one. But so it shows you kind of what he was into before he got there. And then, like you said, it is the first real action scene, and we start seeing things blown up and destroyed and things like that. So no, I like the scene as well. It was the beginning of the excitement.
Right. I just want to give a big shout out to Dougie. Thank you so much for stopping by. Take care, my friend, and hopefully you come back and watch the rest, because I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. And it's interesting you say that, Steve. And you said right at the end there, the start of the excitement, and then we head to Tatooine. Right. Where do we start? Now, when I first watched this, I actually remember this. Oh, great! This is where Luke Skywalker grew up. Like, this is the planet where Luke. Are we going to see some remnants of Luke? What are we going to get from this? Like, this is really exciting. And for me, Tatooine was, for me, I did not enjoy the Tatooine kind of part in this movie. Let me tell you why. Firstly, Watto, I think, was a very poor character, just a very bland, just not very, he just, all he did was trying to, he said he owned Anakin's mom, but we never saw them interact with each other. I think, if they had that interaction with each other and talk about how much they hated each other, I think that would have been a little bit, more intense. I think it would be quite interesting. But, before we get to the pod racing, I want to bring up something beginning with M called Metachlorians. Metachlorians.
What is it?
Metachlorians.
Is that like Alka-Seltzer?
Oh, I wish. What does Obi-Wan say in episode 4, New Hope? The Force is what gives a Jedi his power. It's everywhere. It binds the galaxy together. That's not what Qui-Gon says. He says it's tiny little organisms that it's in everybody. And we don't, this whole Metachlorian thing comes back later in the movie. But it's like, these Metachlorians are off the chart, higher than Yoda's. And I'm like, what? Why are we introducing something so technical and advanced? Like, the Jedi are meant to be mystical and meant to be some sort of a religious cult kind of thing. Why are we introducing these? It's like going to science class. Like, why do we need to know about something that we don't really need to know?
Well, it is science fiction.
It's science. I know, but the Force is what gives Jedi his power. That it's everywhere. It binds the galaxy together. That's what Alec Guinness did so well in portraying, and everyone loved in the first film. And it gave the Jedi kind of their mysticism. And now we get like, oh, his Metachlorian count is over 7,000. I'm like, who cares? Who cares? I don't care about the Metachlorians. And just, come on, guys. It's just something I don't get why they did something like that. And I want to get your opinions on these Metachlorians.
Well, I'll say this about, let me just start with Tatooine for me. It's an important part of the story because it gets us where we need to be. It gets us to Anakin. Okay, that's where he is. That's where he's from. He is ultimately what these prequels are about. And it's what's going to lead us into 4, 5, and 6. So we have to be here. It's important. That being said, I agree with you 100%. I don't know if George Lucas went back and watched 4, 5, and 6 before he did 1, 2, 3. But you're right. I mean, it didn't flow with what he originally said. Like you said, Obi-Wan says, the Force, it surrounds us. It binds us to the galaxy. It's something that's strong inside of every Jedi. We never hear about this until this movie, and it's never really explained as to what they are, why they're important, where they came from. It's just something he came up with. I don't know that a lot of thought was really put into this, and that's too bad because you're right. Just leave it at the Force. That's what's mystical about it. I like that kind of sense of mystery about the Force. Some have it, some don't. It is what it is. You either have it or you don't. It's kind of like throwing a football in the NFL. You either have it or you don't. Or hitting a baseball in baseball. You either can do it or you can't. I can't. But it is what it is. And I think he tried to put too much of a scientific side into it and just kind of confused it a little bit, which is too bad because the Force is all about mysticism and mystery. And I love that about it. So Metachlorians to me it was unnecessary.
Steve, are we on the same wavelength?
We are on the same wavelength, and starting with Tatooine, I do think, like Walt said, it is an extremely important part of the story. I am all about the story. I thought portraying the way it was portrayed visually was good. It's supposed to be a desolate planet, but you're right. Watto as a slave master was not believable. It is where we get to meet Anakin and C-3PO eventually, but again, I was not happy with the casting of Jake Lloyd as Anakin. It did not. We can get to that in a minute, but it did not hold up to what the character should have been for me. And then when they introduced these Metachlorians, I think there was a better way they could do it. I understand what they were trying to build up into, that they sensed something in him, that they sensed the power in him was greater than Master Yoda's, but they didn't have to invent some new organism to be able to do that. They could have easily just said, they sense the Force. They could have easily just said they sense the Force is stronger in him, and left it that mystery that we want it to be. But yeah, the invention of the microorganisms and from not being in any of the movies and then not explaining it was kind of useless. So
yeah, I agree, and I want to bring up Brandy and Dave's point. Tatooine could have been a planet in the galaxy. I didn't see the need for it to be the backdrop. Why did we need to go back to Tatooine? Like,
just for
familiarity, but the whole point of, I think George Lucas was to bring in new environments and new things, and I don't feel we needed to go back to Tatooine. For me, we didn't see anything from the originals there apart from C-3PO, and I just didn't feel it was really necessary. But I want to bring on a big point. Clearly, George Lucas saw a film called Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger and said, hey, that kid, let's hire him for Star Wars. One of the most awful casting choices I think I've ever seen. Now, people are going to say to me, oh, Dan, he's a child. Like, he won't know any better. But you look back on films, right? You look at things like the kid from Guardians at the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy. You look at the kid from Home Alone. You look at all these great childhood actors who are around the same age as Jake Lloyd, and they did a way better job in their own movies. Some even had more of a role than Jake Lloyd did in Phantom Menace. Like, he just had really no acting ability. And people really do like him because he's cute. So is R2-D2, but I'm not going to, say he's the best part of that movie. I mean, and this brings on to me with some dialogue and George Lucas's dialogue in the prequels. Anakin goes, sandstorms are very, very dangerous. Well, no, obviously. I wouldn't want to stand outside in a sandstorm. Like, I think George Lucas had something with sand, because next episode we'll talk about a very iconic line in Attack of the Clones that involves sand. But I think just the way they hired Jake Lloyd, he had nothing behind him. There was nothing really appealing about him. I just didn't think he had it, in my opinion. So I know some people are going to hate me for this, but
I think you're right. There are plenty of childhood actors out there that are fantastic and do a great job at what they do. You guys mentioned a few of them. I remember when Kirsten Dunst starred in Interview with a Vampire as a young girl. I don't know if you guys remember that. She was fantastic in that role. She was really powerful in that role. But for Jake Lloyd, I didn't know the kid, so I can't really say. You're right. I didn't think he did the best job. And hindsight's 20/20. I think going in, they probably thought he was going to do a good job, and it just, didn't pan out. I can't say that they would have picked some. Now we can say, oh, he wasn't good for the role, and probably someone else could have been better. But again, there's a lot of choices in this movie that weren't good. This is another one. You're right. I wasn't happy with the choice, but I didn't know him, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt.
Right, and I think Steve, you already touched upon Jake Lloyd. I want to hear your opinion.
Yeah, he's it goes back to that dry, no emotional acting. And you can say he's a kid, but there are still kids who can act and kids who cannot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how he got this part. And actually, you can get to it in different episode, but him and Hayden Christensen both, I don't think, played the part very well. But it was not believable to me. It was not believable that this kid was going to be the most powerful being in the universe. I thought the acting was bad, and I was not pleased with that choice.
Stacey Rogers says, do you think maybe it's because he looked a young Luke Skywalker, so the fact that he grows up to be Luke Skywalker's dad could have something to do with it?
Absolutely.
Knowing George Lucas, that probably did cross his mind.
Absolutely.
But that obviously did change when it came to episode 2. So I think, again, it's George Lucas's casting and directing, and I just think look, if you want a perfect childhood actor, go watch E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Just like that's as good as you're gonna get. Now I want to bring up, now this is probably where it's going to start getting a little bit more controversial. I want to hear, before I make my opinion, about the pod racing scene.
Okay. I mean, you want me to go first, or Steve?
I would like, yeah, we'll stick with the same order.
Okay.
Well, I would like you to discuss what you think about.
Okay.
Now, I know you quite like the pod racing scene.
No, actually, here's what I think about the pod racing scene. I understand its point, because they needed what they needed to fix their ship, and the only way they could get it was through the money. They had to win the pod race. Fair enough. Okay, that's what's written into the story. That's the screenplay. We're going to go with it. That being said, I didn't think we needed 15 minutes of pod racing.
Right.
They could have done it. They could have edited it and got it done in 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes. We didn't need to see every lap of the entire pod racing. It just kept going on and on and on and on. And we understood, okay, he's got to win. We get it. And he's got to beat Sebulba, who's the best at it. And he's going to try to cheat. I just thought it went on too long. I wasn't a big fan of it. I didn't mind it. I understood where it fit into what we needed for what we had. But it was way too long. Way too long. I mean, I like the idea of it too. I like that. Oh, a race. That's kind of cool. But it just was too long. I'm rambling.
No, trust me. I've been rambling all night. Steve?
I agree with Walt. I think it serves a purpose. I actually had the Nintendo 64 game of it, and I played it like every day for a year after it came out, because when I watched the movie, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the pod racing scenes. Going back now, it's probably the least favorite of my scenes in that movie, and I think it's for the same reasons. It just goes on way too long. Now, I do like things about it. I know they tried to accomplish 2 different things. One is obviously the story plot line of how they needed to get the credits to be able to buy what they needed to buy, and the other part of it, I think, was to show Anakin's abilities that he had the Force more into it. They were really trying to drive that point home, which I don't know if they nailed it on either count, like with the midichlorians or this, but I know what they were trying to do. The one thing I liked about it the best is you get to see some of the Hutts, and that's just other characters that you get to see. Right. That's the part I like the best, but it was way too long. I agree 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably bringing home the point that he was such a great pilot. Fair enough.
Yeah, I think that I agree with that. And what Jeff said, he said that was about the selling video games. And I think that whole scene was a very big marketing plot device there. And Stacey Rogers also said, Disney Down, wasn't it Adam from Adam's Down that suggested the pod racing type ride at Disney? Yeah, we were thinking of a racing kind of experience as a pod racing. And I think that would have been, again, very interesting, very fun. You actually be in the pod, and I think that would have been quite entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is
15 minutes long.
Right. The problem is, for me, you know what? I don't mind the length. For me personally, I watch Formula One, and that can be so long and dry. Same with things like NASCAR. For me, I don't mind watching a lot of racing. The problem is, for me, the pod racing is very stale. It's very stale. Every time you see a pod, the camera pans from left to right. Always, the camera goes from left. The pods are going left to right, and you don't really see the other side of the pod. Like, it's kind of just has really annoyed me that every time they go round a corner, it's left to right. You do see them sometimes face on. You get a first person view, or maybe see the back of the pod. But every time they do a big move, it's from left to right, and you only see the right hand side of the pod. And for me, it's just so like, it's just not very, it's not directed very well. It's very CGI heavy.
Is it lazy?
Yes. Yeah. Why couldn't we see the other side of the pod? Why couldn't we've had like a 360 shot going? You're seeing it all around. We get a bird's eye view when he's going through the canyon. We see, you know, him and Sebulba side by side, clashing a little bit, but we don't see it on the other side. Like, we don't really see. I think it was just very cheaply made, and it doesn't really do much for me. Like, although it's trying to give out a point that he's strong with the Force, I didn't think that. You know, whenever I watch that pod racing scene, I don't think, oh, you know, he's really good with the Force. I just think, oh, he's a great pilot. Right. And also, like, because he had this little hiccup before the race started, we all knew he was going to win in the end. Like, what? For me, I just think there was other ways of him as proving that he was strong with the Force, and not through a pod racing scene. And this goes back to excitement. For me, the droids on the spaceship trying to, you know, rebuild the spaceship is still more exciting than the pod racing scene. I mean, we're now halfway through the movie.
Yeah, they actually could have made it better where he didn't win the pod racing, and they had to find another way to get the credits and get the point. They could have done that. That would have been a nice wrinkle that he didn't win.
And maybe incorporate the Hutts with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why do we, with the Hutts, really didn't have much in the original trilogy? Well, it didn't really have anything in the original film, because obviously that was CGI'd in the special edition. The main, we had Jabba the Hutt in Return of the Jedi. How cool would it be? All right, hey, we get Jabba back. You know, he was a big presence in Return of the Jedi. Hey, he's, you know, oh no, we've got to go and meet Jabba again. Like, I think that would have been kind of interesting. I think that's a great point. Well, I love that. I didn't even think of that. So they get the parts, they get Anakin, and we get the introduction of Darth Maul. See, the pod racing scene was too long. This fight scene was way too short.
Way too short.
Clearly, some balance was not. I would have loved a great, at least that. It wasn't even 5 minutes. It was like 3 hits. Tell him to take off, and then force jump, and he's off. I would have loved to see, like, they could have used the sand as a wet, like, kind of like going back to these if you've never seen Gladiator, they could have taken real big inspiration from Gladiator with Maximus and Commodus fighting in like a sand arena. They could have used sand as a kind of a cheating weapon. You know, we start to experience Darth Maul a little bit. He could have just used the one saber, and I think he does that. I think that would be kind of fun. You kind of still don't see who he is. But I think it would have been so cool if they just added a little bit. I would have taken 5 minutes off the pod racing scene and added that to the Qui-Gon versus, and have actually Qui-Gon come on top, actually win, because then it would make the ending of this movie even more compelling.
Right.
So, I mean, Darth Maul, on first impressions, not talking about the end, the final act, what did we think of his introduction?
Well, good introduction. We'll get into what I feel about him later on. Darth Maul, it's a good introduction to him. I understand it. You don't want to give too much away too early. Okay, right. It's a tease, and I get that. And I think that fight scene in George Lucas's mind was a tease. He didn't want to give away too much because he wants to save it for the end, which we'll get to. But I agree with you, and you kind of stole my thunder. I was going to say the same thing. They could have drawn this out a little bit and actually let Qui-Gon get the better of him, not kill him, not beat him, but get the better of him and think, oh, good, he's stronger than him, which makes the end a little bit more surprising for sure. I agree 100%. They could have made this, let us see how significant of a fighter Darth Maul is now, so that when we get to the final act, we understand how big of a battle this is really going to be.
Right. And Jeff, his introduction. Sorry, Steve. Sorry, I was reading Jeff's comment. Sorry.
I didn't really have a problem with his introduction because I thought it was just going to be just that, his introduction. I was okay with the shortness of the battle, thinking that there were going to be several other encounters that went along with that, and I did not see that. So with that regard, I wish this was much larger of a scene for him. But and correct me if I'm wrong though, is this where do we get to see his lightsaber in this scene? I haven't seen the movie in a while.
We do, but we only see one end.
One side.
Yeah,
right.
one side.
So forget about that.
Which I like. I do like that a lot.
Yes, when that happened, I lost my mind in the theater. But his appeal, his look, the way his presence, it was different, and it was something that excited me. So his visualness of him, I was very pleased with. But I agree, if there wasn't going to be any more encounters leading up to it, this one should have been a much bigger encounter.
Right, I agree, and I think there could have been a little bit more to this. But I do like the introduction. I think we all agree on that. But let's jump into the second half of this act and talk about Coruscant. Now, I want to split this into two parts. I want to split this between Jedi Council and Senate stuff. So let's talk about the Jedi Council first. And where do I start? Right. Yoda. This is the worst thing they could have done to Yoda. When we meet him in Empire Strikes Back, when we do meet him in Return of the Jedi, he's witty, he is charismatic, he's fun, he's just there was something about him that we loved about Yoda. We loved him so much. He returned in The Last Jedi as that comedic Yoda, the funny, Frank Oz kind of Yoda. Thank you, Only One Kenobi. Thank you so much for stopping by. Really great to have you in the chat. So to get a lifeless, again, dreary, wooden Yoda was embarrassing. Like, why would you take such an incredible character like Yoda and just make him sit in a chair and just still make him speak in jumbled words, but nothing, it just sat there. And I think that's what really sums up this second half of this whole act, is that everyone is sitting and talking, just telling us exposition, telling us information, doing nothing. All these Jedi are just sitting in a circle discussing the menace of the Force. Like, they're not doing anything. And they tell Anakin, we're not going to train him. He's too old. They just brought him all the way from Tatooine for no reason. The Jedi in this film they're horrible. They're just like, hey, we don't want him. Go away. Like, we don't need him. And they just, and you got Samuel L. Jackson just sitting here, like, all casual, just doing his own thing. They just, I think the Jedi just are made to look like buffoons in this part of the movie. I don't know what you guys' opinions on it. I feel like they could have done a lot more. And I'll talk about what they could have done with exposition a little bit in a bit.
Well, I love the Jedi Council. First off, it's one of the things that intrigues me about the backstory is the Jedi itself, the Council, all the different Jedi they used to have. The word that comes to mind for me is potential.
Right.
And the lack thereof. Okay. There's so much potential in the Jedi Council that they could have used. I like the characters. I like Kuati Mundi, Luminara, Kit Fisto, Shakti. Oh, okay, great. Mace Windu, which is fantastic. But you're right. We don't get to really see them in action. They're just sitting around.
They don't do anything.
Right.
A lot of the Jedis you just mentioned, they don't get one word of dialogue. They just sit there and do nothing. And I think it's a shame. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's where we lack in this movie. Now, that being said, the one thing I will disagree with you, in my opinion, Dan, is I understand. They didn't think he was right to be a Jedi. They didn't want to train him. So be it. That if that's their opinion, they had their opinions for it. I think we know why, because they felt something in him that probably wasn't right, and they didn't want him because they knew if we trained him and he could be super bad, it could hurt us. I think. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. So I don't have a problem with them not wanting to train him. But you're right. The potential was there, and he just kind of whiffed with it, which is too bad.
And I think, You know, I think that's a great point. I think if they really noticed something deep inside him, remember, you know, he is the, you know, the guy to bring balance to the Force, right? You know, Yoda could have had like a small vision of something. It could have had like, you could have used music in a really great way here. You could have had like a really just bright kind of little chime here about bringing balance to the Force. And then you could have had just maybe the lighting change very slightly and have maybe duh, 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 or duh, duh, and just use a little bit of emphasis to say, hey, we don't want to train him. Instead of just like not telling us why we don't want to train him, they didn't give us a reason, really, apart from he was too old. I mean, again, like you said, it's potential. They could have gone so many ways with this, and they didn't. They didn't give us anything. And that's why I was not a fan of the Jedi in this movie. And Steve, I want to hear, you know, are you a fan of what they did? I'm sure you're a Jedi fan, but you know, do you like how they were used in this movie?
Oh, I'm a huge Jedi fan, and no, I was not pleased with how they were using this movie at all. So they're supposed to be the entity, the most powerful group of people in this whole thing. And first off, a lot of people are gonna get mad at me, but I think Samuel L. Jackson is a terrible actor. He plays the same part. He's a good actor for one part. He plays it in every movie, and that was not this movie. It should not have been that way.
Okay.
That being said, I loved seeing all the Jedi, but like you said, they didn't have a part. They just sat there. It was a quick cut scene to it to let us know that they didn't want to train it. I agree with Walt. I think that was important, and I didn't have a problem with that. But it was so short and so lackluster that there was just this great entity was belittled a little bit. And like you said, Yoda our first introduction to Yoda as a great Jedi master, and he didn't do anything either. He just sat there. It was a great, I loved seeing the council. It was very underwhelming the way they were used, and it was way too short to be the introduction to the council.
Right, and Stacey Rogers brings up a point saying maybe the point behind them not giving any reason is that the Jedi Council, they don't need to give a reason. And I think you're right. I don't think they needed to give a reason to Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I think it was important to tell us, the audience, of the reason. By not just telling them out loud through words. I think they could have used things like lighting or sound effects to be like, hey, actually, we don't want him. You could have had a little, you know, Darth Vader, you know, dark side shot, like, yeah, something deep.
Yeah.
To say, hey, we, you know, it just tells us something. And, you know, I think they, again, while I agree, there was potential there, and they fell flat. It was flat. Like I feel the film, I feel that describes this film, the word is flat. They could have spruced up a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to talk about the Senate. Now, for me, this is all about walking and talking and sitting down and talking. There's nothing, you know, nothing happens here at Coruscant. And I just want to talk about another pivotal character in Star Wars, and that's the Emperor. Now, in the original trilogy, you have the Emperor. His master plan was to take father against son, manipulate Vader to get Luke to either turn him to the dark side or to kill him. That was his master plan, very manipulative. In this movie, all he wants to do is for Princess Amidala to sign a paper, to sign a peace treaty, so he can become Chancellor. For me, I think there are other ways for him to become Chancellor. I think there could have been something a little bit more deviant. Like, this is the Emperor, right? And you're trying to get Amidala to sign a peace treaty, and she doesn't really until she goes back to Naboo. And way that Vader could be manipulated so easily by the Emperor, something just doesn't line up for me. And just the way everything was told to us, I think was easily one of the worst things. Everyone was sitting and talking, or walking and talking. I want to take an example out of J.J. Abrams' Star Trek film. If you guys have seen that film, there's a great scene of getting Kirk onto the Enterprise, and Bones stabs him and makes his hands and face go all numb. Now, while he's getting him on the Enterprise to find a cure, Bones is actually telling him a lot of information, telling the audience about Spock, about what's going on. You know, it's an exciting scene. Like you want to get Kirk getting the cure and just having that sense of urgency. Everything was going very fast paced. In Phantom Menace, they're just sitting down. They could have had a drink. They could have had a cup of tea and just spoken about, you know, what's happening down in Coruscant City. They could have talked about, hey, the Coruscant Giants won at 3-2 against the Nebulians. I don't know. There's something, you know, there's nothing serious. There's nothing exciting, right? And this still goes back. The last entertaining thing now was the 1 minute and a half, 2 minute fight between Darth Maul and Qui-Gon Jinn. There's nothing exciting going on here. And that really annoys me. And there's too much politics. This is a Star Wars movie. We don't want backstage politics. I mean, you can have politics, but make it exciting. You know, look, I'm rambling again. I'm gonna take a break and let Walt go from here.
Well, I understand that. I try to keep politics out of movies as much as possible. I understand that sometimes they play parts in the story that you're telling. This whole part of the movie to me was, I guess, integral to what we were trying to get to. It sometimes confuses me. I have to go back and like watch it. I'm like, what are we trying to? What's the point here? Exactly. So you're right. I wasn't a big fan of this side of it as well. I guess I go into these movies expecting a lot of action and a lot of fighting. And like you said, a lot of the dialogue, the screenplay itself and the dialogue itself just wasn't very good. And I think that's what unfortunately doomed this movie, in my opinion. But you're right. That whole scene with anything with the Senate, it wasn't done well. And you're right. It just wasn't necessary. I don't know that it was necessary, but I mean, it is what it is at this point. You're right. I just don't have a lot to say about it because it's not one of my favorite parts.
It's not interesting.
No, it's not. It's not.
Steve?
Yeah, this again is like the Jedi Council. This should have been one of the bigger parts of the movie, story-wise. It should have been. It's iconic. It's important. But the one thing that I might be jumping ahead here. If I am, just stop me. The one thing I sort of disagree with is I thought the way the Senator Palpatine. I know he didn't get her to sign the peace treaty originally or whatever it was, but he manipulated her. There's a scene where he would say, and this is where the true people step in and the blockade and all that other stuff. I thought the way he manipulated her there was a great portrayal of the way he manipulates minds to get what he wants. And in doing that, I thought it was a good portrayal of him becoming. And again, this is the story movie. This is the one that's going to tell the story. So I didn't mind it, but it was definitely lackluster of what its potential could have been.
And I think it goes back to, again, with portraying of the characters. Now, if I asked somebody to sit down with me and watch 4, 5, and 6, and then watch episode 1, and I tell that person, hey, that's the Emperor, they'll be like, what? No, he doesn't sound like he doesn't look. There's nothing about the Emperor about him. There's nothing really, like, he sounds a little bit the same, but that's not the Emperor. Like, do you get what I mean? Again, there needed to be some sort of Emperor quality about him, right? Maybe he had a limp. Maybe that's why he was using his walking stick. I don't know.
I didn't mind. See, Dan, I didn't mind that part of it. I like the fact that he was able to be two different people completely. It helped in my opinion. I knew who he was, so I didn't need that. I didn't need that hint. I knew who he was, so I liked the fact that I was like, wow, he can really act a good guy when he wants to, but we know what he is for real. Yeah. So I didn't necessarily mind that. I actually like, and Ian McDiarmid, I think that's his name, as the Emperor is fantastic.
Yeah, great performance.
Wonderful job. He was wonderful. But no, I didn't mind that he was this, what looked like at the time, a straight-laced guy doing the right thing and still being manipulative. So I like that part of it. I like the fact that he could be totally different person than what he really was.
And I just want to bring on the fact, like, I think some people get confused about, good characters doesn't mean good acting. And the same can be said, like, great acting doesn't mean great character. For example, You know, the character of Palpatine for me in The Phantom Menace was quite bland, but Ian McDermott's performance of Palpatine was very good.
Yeah.
Now we're getting on a little bit, and I want to skip ahead to the final act. This is the final battle scene. Here we go. This is everything. We've had so many dry moments. We've had a couple of, hey, this is actually not too bad. This is where everything starts to go crazy. We're going to skip over, you know, hey, the Gungans are going to help them fight, because I think, again, not very exciting scene. You know, they get the Gungans to help them. You know, Boss Nass goes to the thing, and great. Let's talk about this in three different parts, like we did before. Let's talk about the Gungans versus the droids, the space scene, and then the lightsaber scene, the hangar scene, mixed with the throne room scene and the lightsaber scene. So 4 different topics. Let's start off with the Gungans and the droids in the open field. Now, if you've seen this film very recently, the CGI here does not hold up at all. It looks more animated than a live action, what's supposed to be a live action film. The way the tanks come over the hill look very CGI and very outdated. And I just think, right, this is kind of the, you know, the distraction of the droids from the palace, great. But I think these Gungans, again, if you weren't here earlier, I think the Gungans should have had a way more serious role. They should have been great, fierce warriors, but they were just quite silly, and I just didn't get how they could defeat these droids. And I know this goes back to Steve's point about the underdogs, you know, going up against the droids. But I'm going to be honest, they wouldn't have won if Anakin didn't take out the space station. So were they really underdogs? Because they won, but you know, they didn't really do a lot of damage, in my opinion. It's kind of like sending guys with spears and swords to guys who've got machine guns. It's kind of like, you got
a nice little gun battle. It's true.
And well, I want to go to you first about these two sides with the Gungans and the droids. You know, does it still hold up? Is it something that's just, you know, I don't know.
Well, I'm okay with it. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's kind of far-fetched to think that they could win. I mean, they were totally outnumbered, but we see this all the time in different movies. We've seen it, and not to bring in a Lord of the Rings reference, but in the Battle of Pelennor Fields, if the Army of the Dead doesn't come, I don't know that Minas Tirith survives. So I get it. You're right. If it's not for Anakin taking down the droids, they probably don't win. But that's what makes Anakin's side of it so important. Is down on the ground, they're just holding them off for as long as they can, and hoping that they win, or they're hoping that they can hold them off. So I understand the significance of it and the importance of it. I don't have a problem with that. I enjoyed it. It was entertaining enough for me that I actually liked it.
I feel like it was entertainment filler. Like it did fill, it filled a part of the movie. Now, Steve, I want you to, because obviously you did speak about the whole, you know, underdog versus the, you know, the big bad droids. Where do we go from here?
I was going to bring up the exact same reference that Walt just brought up from Lord of the Rings. So, like that movie, you got a lot going on at the same time, so they got to keep flashing back to one to the other. But I'm okay with the fact that the Gungans were never supposed to win. You know, again, that goes to that lesser thing. Just like when Aramir did in Lord of the Rings, those guys knew they were riding to their death. You know, that there was just no other thing around that. You got to have that, but the idea of them willing to die for their cause and for their planet was pretty important, in my opinion. So I think it served a massive purpose. It did distract some of the droid army. They knew they were going to die, and I think what would have made it more believable is if you would have seen some more of that destruction of their race and how many people they actually lost during the battle. But I think it was an important part of it, and I think it, like Walt said, it leads up to a much bigger part and how much more of an important part Anakin played in the whole thing.
Right, I agree. And let's lead on to the hangar/space scene. Now, I just want you guys to picture this, okay? This is George Lucas's mind right here. I should have like a rant alert button or something. I just want you to think about this, right? They enter the hangar, okay? Qui-Gon says to Anakin, go get in that spaceship. You'll be safe there. You know, it'll be fine, right? So he's there. He's calm. He's not, you know, everything's going down, but he's staying safe. And all of a sudden, the spaceship takes off, okay? All right, so, okay, right? Anakin is being taken off into space. We know he's a good pilot. Well, I don't know. We don't know if he's a good pilot because he's a pod racer. That's like saying, hey, I could drive a car, but I can't drive a plane. You know, that did confuse me a little bit. But the worst thing, right? Conveniently, right, I've been saving this all week. Okay, conveniently, Qui-Gon told him to get into that specific spaceship, and conveniently at the bottom of that spaceship is a child-sized helmet that he put on, no problem, and he can. I'm sorry. But really, would they really have had a child-sized helmet? How much more of an entertaining scene would it have been if there was a proper-sized, adult-sized helmet? Because why would a child be flying a spaceship? These small things really annoy me because, you know, it goes to the detail, okay? Why would there be why specifically in that spaceship would there be a child-sized helmet at that time?
I got one. I got an answer for that, Dan.
I would love to hear it.
Because it could have been a creature that was the size of a child. So it wasn't necessarily a child, but it could have been a small creature. Because, you know, in these movies, you have creatures that fly planes too. So just to play devil's advocate, I'll say it's because it was a small creature that was a child size that had a child size head. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Give it the benefit of the doubt. But for me, I don't think George Lucas was thinking that.
He wasn't.
If he was thinking that, there should have been, you know, pilots who were from different races. We know there are.
I agree.
I think there should have been Gungans flying the spaceships. Why can't have that? Because the Gungans and the Nebulians were living together. Well, kind of separate. But if we knew they were fighting alongside each other at this point, why couldn't we have Gungans and, you know, humans flying these spaceships? I just don't buy the fact that either, you know, Jake Lloyd has a massive head, or that they conveniently had a child-sized helmet in the spaceship. It just, yeah. And I saw what you said in the comments, the one size fits all. I don't buy that. You know, you get child-sized hats and whatever.
Well, Rob said that first. Rob said it. He was funny. Rob also said Steve made it out of Legos.
I don't know. It's something very nitpicky, but it has bugged me for so long. And Chris Stuckmann, who I spoke about earlier, really pointed this out, and I just thought he's absolutely true. Hey Kevin, what is up? It's good to see you. I hope you had a great time over in Disney World with the whole Ohana. It's good to see you. And Dougie's back as well. Wow, still going on. Hey, we're only getting started with this whole helmet Jake Lloyd spaceship thing. So let's talk about this space scene. What do we think, Walt? What you know? Do you like this space scene? Does it remind you of the originals?
I liked it. I didn't mind it. I understood, again, the importance of it because he needed to, you know, it was going to help to get, you know, they knew that. I think they knew they were outnumbered on the ground and they needed help, and they knew the only way to do it was to knock out the Central Command. So I liked it. I don't want to get too much into it. I want to make sure Steve gets in on this one. But I liked it. I understand the importance of it. Yep.
Steve?
I was okay with it. I think it could have been done much better. Again, this goes back to Jake Lloyd not necessarily being a great actor. The clumsiness of it, if he's supposed to be this great pilot and he did this great thing in the pod racing, the clumsiness of how the ship got even moving in the first place, and he started doing it was not believable. And then he comes out and he's this amazing pilot that can, you know, blow this thing up. And I have a problem with the helmet too, Dan, just to let you know. They could have put a big Darth Vader head on him from like Spaceballs, that kind of helmet on. It would have been a lot better than that. So, but no, I think the scene is important. I think it was done subpar.
I think this goes back to also the comedic effect. This is a reason why I didn't think we needed Jar Jar. Like, instead of using those badly timed comedic scenes with Jar Jar, have the oversized helmet for Anakin. That would have made it way more funny. and way more interesting instead of having a oversized rabbit sticking his tongue out. I mean, just I think it's just, again, it's really poorly directed and understanding the script.
I will say this: the Lucky Minute makes a good point. I think the scene with him in the ship was on autopilot, and that's why he went out. I could be wrong, but I think they're right. I think that it was on autopilot. That's the only reason why the ship went out.
The only reason why the ship went out, which I think that's for me, for Anakin to go up into space, I think that's a great idea. I really genuinely think that's a really great idea. Right. But I just don't buy the helmet thing.
Right. No, I'm with you there. But we didn't bring that up, that we were talking about why the ship went out. But I think that was why. Yeah. I think they're right. It's because it was on autopilot.
It was on auto. They wanted all the ships to go up and defend, and to take out the transmitter to the droids on the ground. That's the reason. Yep. But yeah, for me, that space scene did remind me a little bit of the Death Star scene. There's something about it I just didn't click with me. He goes through the hangar and he's just sitting there. Like, isn't this place meant to be full of battle droids? And you see like the odd two coming up towards him. He goes, "Pooh, dead. Pooh, dead." Like, I would have like swamps of droids. Like, if you look at Return of the Jedi, or even A New Hope, when the Millennium Falcon flies into the Death Star, there are hundreds and hundreds of stormtroopers ready to see what's inside the Millennium Falcon. But here you just see a couple of droids walking around and seeing, oh wait, no, there's a Naboo starfighter here. I think there could have been, again, this goes back to everything being flat in this film. There needs to be a little bit more urgency. Anakin didn't seem worried.
Mm-hmm.
He's a child. Yeah. He wasn't worried, was he? He goes, whoa, like, just, Yeah. Alex Downs, welcome into Ranting Star Wars Sunday. Trust me, when it comes to like episodes 4, 5, and 6, I won't be ranting as much. But look, I think the space scene does its job again with the Gungans versus droids. It's good filler. And let's, before we get to the main fight scene, let's just quickly talk about the storming the throne scene with Padme and her bodyguards trying to get to Nute Gunray. Again, this goes back to Nute Gunray being just bland. Like, hey, he's trapped inside the throne room. Oh, this one's a decoy. I mean, great.
Right.
Like, so what? Like, just, they've jammed the doors. Now we're gonna sign a peace treaty, and we don't even see them sign a peace treaty. It just cuts. It's just filler.
I agree.
Let's skip. Let's talk about the best part of this movie, because I think we've had so much negativity. Let's talk about the best part of this movie, and that is Darth Maul versus Qui-Gon versus Obi-Wan Kenobi. Again, I'm gonna ask both of you first before we come to me. Walt, what do we think of this scene?
Well, it is pretty darn good. I have to agree 100%. Ray Park, who plays the role of Darth Maul, is pretty darn fantastic in the role. He's a great stuntman, and I'm glad that he actually had to be this character in this, because he's fantastic. I know that Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson did a lot of training to get ready for this scene, a lot of training, and they nailed it. First off, let me just go back real fast. John Williams' score in this movie is fantastic, by the way.
It's phenomenal.
If there's one thing that is phenomenal, it's the score in the movie. Okay, the music is wonderful. Yeah. And he nails it on the head in this final scene with the music playing in the background as they're doing the fight scene. And when you see Darth Maul for the first time in Star Wars history not have a one-sided but a two-sided lightsaber, your jaw just drops, and you're like, this guy is really cool. Yeah. Bad or not, this guy is awesome. And then he just backs it up with not fighting one, but two awesome Jedis, and he's going toe-to-toe with them. It's a fantastic scene.
If there's one thing about Darth Maul, he is bad. Like, he is awesome.
He's the man.
Like,
he is the man.
Just, and what's great, he doesn't have a lot of dialogue written by George Lucas. He is the Padawan. Like, he's not even the big, but that only makes Emperor Palpatine even more like, hey, this guy trained Darth Maul, and he's kicking butt. Like, he just took on a Jedi Master and a Padawan on his own with a double-ended lightsaber. Like, how awesome is that? Like, and just as soon as that reveal happens, you know, when the music is going, like, everyone is quickening up. Like, finally, we're getting some pace to this movie. And you see one side come out, and then the other side of the lightsaber come out. I'm just like, and then Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are like simultaneously like, hey, we got to get this guy. This scene was amazing. This whole sequence was phenomenal. Steve, what do you think that proper introduction to Darth Maul there?
No, this was by far the best part of the movie, I think, in everybody's minds. When you get to see Darth Maul, like I was saying earlier, when he hits that lightsaber and it comes out both ends, I was in the theater. The whole theater lost their minds, and it was just something you hadn't seen before. It was a redeeming quality. The movie finally started getting the action that it needed. We had little bits of action along the way, but getting to see Darth Maul, his fighting style in a true battle, just was impressive. And getting to see how he took on both of them with what appeared to be ease. It was mind blowing, and that music, like you said, John Williams, that music at that scene is probably the best that there was in the whole movie, and it just led. It was just a great battle. It might be the best individual battle. I say individual, even though there's three people, but it might be the best individual battle maybe in all of Star Wars. For me,
it was definitely probably one of the best, well scripted. Choreographed. I don't know. Choreographed. That's me and my English. Choreographed fight scene, I think, in the Star Wars saga. I mean, although there wasn't much, I think, emotional meaning behind why they're fighting compared to something like Luke and Vader, the way the whole scene was designed and the way it played out was fantastic, like just amazingly done. We could really see, hey, Obi-Wan isn't ready. He's getting his butt kicked, like he's getting knocked off the ledges, and it's mainly Qui-Gon taking the load out of these two. And you got Darth Maul, just like he's not really breaking a sweat. And then we come to probably one of the most heartfelt scenes in the whole of Star Wars, and that is Qui-Gon's death. And you see Obi-Wan watching him as he dies. And for me, that was a very powerful scene. Really powerful scene. Because although, Liam Neeson didn't know he was going to die until later on, because he forgot to read the script before he signed the paper. Just watching Obi-Wan's expression when he shouts no, when he watches his master die, I think was a really great part of this movie. We actually get some sort of emotion out of the character. We have something called emotions in this movie, and we get it finally after an hour and 20 minutes from Obi-Wan Kenobi after Qui-Gon dies. So what do we think of Qui-Gon's death?
Necessary. I think it was necessary. I think it struck a chord, which I think is the purpose of it. I like the fact that it happened the way it did, with him having to watch his master die and seeing it firsthand and not being able to do anything about it because he was behind the barrier and he had to wait for the barrier to go down. I enjoyed that thoroughly. I thought it was sad. I didn't want him to die, but I understand the point of the death, because moving forward, you needed Obi-Wan to train Anakin, not Qui-Gon. Yeah. So he was going to be, for the story to be consistent, and go the way it's supposed to go, Qui-Gon's got to be out of the picture anyway.
Yep,
so
I agree.
I understand it that he dies. What I don't like is what happens after he dies and Obi-Wan gets in the room with Darth Maul. I don't think he should have. Well, I don't even know if we want to get into that yet. That next scene.
Yeah, just go ahead, because we'll talk about this.
Okay.
Yeah.
For me, I think that Darth Maul could have been such an incredibly pivotal character. And maybe George Lucas knew this. Maybe he didn't want him to be bigger than Darth Vader. But he could have been an extremely powerful and popular villain for the entire trilogy. And yet they killed him at the end of this movie. And I didn't understand that at all.
I don't think he actually realized. He didn't realize how popular he was going to be.
I guess not. Because he could have, after he killed him, he could have just left. Yeah. Or Obi-Wan could have got the better of him, and then he ran off because he knew he wasn't going to make it. But to kill such a popular character, and you're right, I don't think he knew he was going to be that popular, was just too bad.
It's too bad.
So iconic.
And I think that's why, as we've seen over the last couple of years, they started to bring him back in things like Star Wars The Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, all these great TV. I highly recommend these TV shows, these animated shows, because they really gave Darth Maul a big backstory into this. And also, spoiler alert, he showed up in Solo. So it's interesting to see where we might go now with Darth Maul, and that he might not be dead. So we'll see, because he is so popular. Steve, what about the whole Qui-Gon and the end of Darth Maul? What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think the battle, again, going back to where I think one of the smartest things they did in the battle is that it wasn't continuous action. They built up the suspense, and then they put the shield barriers up, and you had to wait. And you're just sitting there, and you can watch the difference in demeanor between a master like Qui-Gon Jinn, where I think he meditates there. And again, it's been a while since I watched the movie, so correct me if I'm wrong. And then you got Darth Maul, who's frantic, just kind of waiting back and forth. And then I think Obi-Wan Kenobi, if I remember correctly, doesn't have the patience that Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qui-Gon Jinn. So just watching those, there are different mannerisms. And then when the shields come down, they fight, the shields go back up again. But to your point you just made, I'm one of those people that doesn't believe Darth Maul is dead. And that is because he does show up with metal legs in, I believe it is Solo.
Yep.
And I think he's going to play a much bigger part. But I also agree with the fact that he cannot be bigger than Darth Vader. He can't be. No. That would ruin the entire story of everything that they do. We could do a lot with him, but he cannot be bigger than Darth Vader. So the story, the battle, absolutely. That's why in the beginning we mentioned, Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor, I thought were perfect. They did the roles perfectly, because you finally get the emotion that we were waiting on, like you said. And I think the battle was very well done. And again, I don't think he's dead. We'll see.
And I think it would have been quite an interesting. I think if they did keep Maul for episodes 2 and 3, I would have loved him to see an interaction with other Jedi, or interaction with Count Dooku or Grievous or some other people, or maybe just be more of the Chancellor's or Palpatine's bidding. Palpatine could be like, hey, go and take out Gunray, for example. You just give him a little bit more. And just coming off the end of this, going into Qui-Gon's funeral, before that, Yoda goes up to Obi-Wan Kenobi and goes, agree with you, the council does, and they finally let Anakin be trained by Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, for me, look, I don't buy that, because literally they just said 20 minutes ago that they're not going to allow him to train the boy. Everyone in the council says, nope, you're not training him. Oh, wait, now you are training them. Like, it's just something really unnecessary. I think it could have been I think they could have gone that route again, but have more Obi-Wan be like, hey, I want to do this. I want to train the boy. I want to train Anakin. And then Yoda agrees, instead of just like, hey, agree with you, the council does. Well, there you go. So, and then we finally get the big end celebration scene. So just to finish off those two, the final scenes, before we do our final thoughts for the film, what do we think of those two final scenes? First off, Walt.
Well, I think the final scene with the funeral was meant to be emotional, because we're seeing a good character for the last time being buried, and going off, to be buried, which is good. I thought that was nice. I'm glad they did that. I like the fact that they gave him a little bit of closure like that, because I really enjoyed his character. I think Qui-Gon was very good in this movie, and an important part to the movie. The final scene after that, where they kind of have the celebration, to me was kind of George Lucas mimicking off of Episode 4 celebration at the end.
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of the when they get the medals at the end of Episode 4, A New Hope. That's what it kind of reminded me of, was the celebration scene there. So it is what it is. I will say this, when Chancellor Palpatine sees Anakin for the first time, and he says, "We'll be sure to watch your progress very intently in the future." That was kind of an omen of what's.
I do like that. Again, there are those. You see the scripts being not great, but you do get those one lines quite, rarely. That's be like, hey, okay, well, I kind of get something here. Like I'm actually getting something out of it. Steve?
Yeah, definitely Qui-Gon Jinn's funeral I thought was a great emotional point to hit home on. I thought it was well done, especially with an iconic actor like Liam Neeson. He needed a proper send-off. So I didn't have a problem with that. And going back to Yoda and the way the dialogue went between him and Obi-Wan, I didn't really have that much of a problem with it. I think they could have done more with it, but he makes it known that he doesn't agree with it. He actually he even says, "The chosen one the boy may be, nevertheless I sense grave danger in him." And he never says he agrees with it, but he does say the council agrees to let him go with it. So the council may have already voted, which we didn't get to see.
Yep.
And Obi-Wan Yoda is still saying, "I don't agree with this," but the council does. So not saying that he changed his mind necessarily, as opposed to he even said, "I sense grave danger in the boy."
Yeah.
And that's the lack and that's exactly right, Steve. But they never explain that. They never really get into that.
Again, they don't explain things.
That's important stuff that I think should be in the movie. Okay, you changed your mind. Why'd you change your mind? Did you change it as well? Did they override you? What made you change your mind? What made them change their mind? That kind of stuff was stuff that I think would have been and should have been important to the film. And yet we don't really get an explanation behind that. And yet we get 15 minutes of pod racing.
Again, and that goes back to, we want explanation. We don't want explanation in a way that they're all sitting down talking about Senate meetings and politics. We want to be told the important things in quite an entertaining way instead of just glossing over things and looking at things that might seem fun, but they're really not. Right. Now, one last thing before I rant on one more thing. The last person to talk in this movie is Boss Nass, and he says peace, and he holds up the orb from Lord of the Rings. Just this guy has the final word, and he did nothing in the movie. Like, just okay, he let the Gungans do whatever, but this guy I just don't buy it. And let's just wrap up. I want to ask both of you a question. I don't know if you agree with me, but there is no main character in this movie. Because, let me explain. Qui-Gon Jinn dies in the end, so he can't be the main character, because otherwise he'll be in the sequels. It's not Obi-Wan Kenobi, because he's second to Qui-Gon. It's not Anakin, because he comes halfway through the movie. It's not Padme, because she also comes in a third through the movie. And obviously it's not Darth Maul. This is quite surprising. It blows my mind that this movie has no main character, and that's they could look. Qui-Gon Jinn, Liam Neeson has top billing. He's getting paid the most, so maybe he's the main character. But Qui-Gon, really, what is he? He's a stern Jedi. He doesn't have much emotion. He's just doing what the Jedi's asked him to do. He's got these feelings, but he dies in the end. And there's no main character in this movie. It's not Palpatine, because he comes in near the end of the movie. I don't know if do you guys agree on that statement? I don't know. Is it just me going crazy?
Well, no, I agree. I think the main character is supposed to be Anakin. I mean, that's ultimately who I think they want to be, and what the movie's supposed to drive to be is because these prequels are about Darth Vader and where he originates from. So I think Anakin is supposed to be the main character, but we never feel that way.
Right. And the lucky miss is I think this was Obi-Wan's story. Then if it was Obi-Wan's story, I would have put him more as a pivotal. I would have been like, hey, Qui-Gon Jinn, you stay on the spaceship in Tatooine, and you and Obi-Wan go out and find the pod racing and have him more interact with the main characters and the other side characters. I think Obi-Wan should have done a lot of Qui-Gon Jinn's things and make that more of a training film. More like, this could have been like a Rocky film, like Obi-Wan training. Okay, I think that would have been a great idea, because Obi-Wan becomes probably the main character in 2 and 3. So, that's just the way Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think there was any main character, but I'm not necessarily opposed to that.
Okay.
Because again, this is a storytelling. It's had to set up everything for every other Star Wars to come after it, and for me, it's the beginning of how Anakin became Darth Vader. It's the beginning of Luke Skywalker's parents, like it or not, good or bad, however it was portrayed. It's the beginning of Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's the beginning of Senator Palpatine and the way he rose to become the Emperor. I'm okay with the fact that there wasn't a clear-cut main character, but that there were several main stories developing. And I do agree with Paul. I think the idea was to make Anakin the head main character, but I think the poor casting role there just didn't work.
Right. I do agree. And
Sorry. Oh, go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say the casting was definitely very poor in this movie.
Right. I think whenever you have a main character, usually with a main character, you're telling it from their point of view.
Yeah.
And this wasn't Obi-Wan's point of view, so that's why he wasn't the main character. Yeah. It wasn't necessarily Qui-Gon's point of view. Whose point of view was it? Usually you have that. We didn't really have that with this movie. So I agree. There was no main character, but I still think, and Dougie's saying it was bureaucracy or politics, and that's kind of true. I think that's really where maybe the whole point of the movie was. And I think that was part of what made it so kind of bland and boring.
And I just want to give a big welcome to the Simple Joys. I think this is the first time you joining us in the live stream. So thank you so much for stopping by. Hopefully you're a Star Wars fan just as much as us, as well as Disney fans as well. And we've got Cargo here as well. Hey, Pickle. Who are those awesome guests you have on here tonight? They all look like cool people. We've got Walt from Mouse Talk, and we have Steve from Stevesworld. Thank you, Cargo, so much for stopping by. Great to see you as well. And, I do agree. I think that for me, did we need a main character in this movie? For me, yes, because I think, each Star Wars movie before did have main characters, even in the first Star Wars film, it was all really based around Luke and Leia trying to get those plans. But, I think it's Phantom Menace as a whole, I'm going to go back to this word. It was very flat. It had a lot of potential. I think they could have really ironed over a lot of things, but it was very flat over the years. It's been over the 20 years it's been out. It is not my worst. I want to hear you guys in a second. It's not the worst Star Wars movie for me. It is probably my second worst, which will maybe go into maybe in a couple of weeks' time. But Phantom Menace was my second least favorite Star Wars film. Again, potential really just fell flat. The end scene with Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul, really awesome scene. Best scene in the whole film, but really the only great big scene in this film. That's my wrap up for me. Walt, what's your kind of conclusion of the Phantom Menace?
Sure. And I do want to say before I get to that, I did have 5 trivia questions for everybody in the chat just to see, first off, A, who was paying attention, and B, just for fun, because I want them to be included in this so that they have some stuff to talk about as well. So before we head out, I'll do some fun trivia questions. Some of them are pretty easy and some of them aren't. But for me, overall, what was your question, Dan?
What's your final conclusion, your final opinions on the Phantom Menace?
No, it's not, for me, it's not the worst of all the Star Wars movies, okay? But for me, it is the most disappointing of all the Star Wars movies. And I'll just preface it because I was around, to show my age, I was around for the originals. I was there in 1977 when it debuted and premiered in the theaters, 77, 80, and 83. I saw them all in the movie theaters. So to wait 16 years to go back into the Star Wars universe was so exciting, and we were so happy and so enthralled. And then to come back to this, it was the most disappointing to me. Because after this one, I knew what was coming. So I wasn't as disappointed. So it's not the worst of the group, but it was the most disappointing for me.
And where would you rank this out of all your films?
Out of all of them, including the standalones,
including the spin-offs, because obviously we will be talking about the spin-offs as well. Where would you rank this?
Say it's going to be tied for second worst, and I will leave it at that.
Fantastic. I love that, and I look forward to hearing your other picks as well. And Steve, what is your final opinions on the Phantom Menace? Where would you rank this on your list?
So I'm not as down on the movie as everybody else is. I actually enjoyed it. It was a storytelling movie, in my opinion, which I think is extremely necessary. They could have done a lot better with the storytelling, though. They could have done a lot more. They could have added some action films or action sequences in there. Overall, though, I think it was very important for to start everybody's stories that we know are coming. But I think they could have done a better job with some of the casting. I think they could have done a better job with some of the action scenes. This is, to me, I gotta be honest, this is really gonna throw people for a loop. When I first saw this movie, I liked it better than the original trilogy, any of them.
Wow.
Much better. Now, that is because I did not grow up knowing Star Wars. So when I started watching them, I grew up in an era where, the computer graphics were just coming into it. So when I saw these computer graphics, this was like top notch at the time when it came out. I'm used to seeing, the original Star Wars. It's all dark, completely dark. There's not a lot of color to it, anything. Then you get introduced to places in this movie where there's a lot of color in Naboo and some of these other things that you get to see. So I didn't have a problem with the movie as much. Going back now that seeing the progression that we have now, I do not like it better than the original trilogy.
Yep.
But it's not that far behind them for me. But as my least favorite, since I'm not going to be here, but my least favorite is Attack of the Clones.
Okay.
Which you guys can discuss next week, or next month. But this one probably, it probably is my second least favorite, but not by miles, because I'm okay with the prequels and the originals all lumped together. I don't have much difference between those.
Fair enough.
Fantastic. Love it. I like, and I think that's what's important about these Star Wars films. Some people are going to love others different than others. Some are going to enjoy, have their favorites be different to others. And Juan Rodriguez says, my favorite Star Wars ever is Rogue One. And I think, a lot of people will have difference of opinion. And I think that's what's great about Star Wars. There's so many different films, so many people like different episodes. And we'll be talking about these once a month, every month, right up to episode 9 in December, and I'm super excited. Now, before we head off, let's do some trivia.
This is gonna be fun.
So what I think will happen is Walt will say the question in the chat, and I think the first person Walt sees will get a point. And then obviously I can confirm that if that question is the answer. Obviously me and Steve can confirm if that is the correct answer. We're not going to do spelling or anything like that, as long as we know, what you mean. And I think maybe when we get to December, maybe once we have somebody who's got a near enough, maybe we'll do this every single time we do Star Wars Sundays. Whoever's got the most points by the end of the year will get a big Star Wars Episode 9 prize. I think that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, we could do that.
Cool.
All right, and by all means, this is all for fun right now. But I just figured I want you guys interactive in the chat, because we've been on for almost 2 hours, and you guys have been great and been sticking right with us. So we want to get you included as well. And yes, guys, let me know if these are wrong, and somebody puts the right answer. Then absolutely. So the first trivia question is, what is the first word in the opening crawl?
Ooh, what is the first word of the opening crawl?
Now, Steve and Dan, do you know what the first word is?
It's quite a tricky question. I would say no, I don't.
Steve, you know?
I used to, and I've had this trivia question before, and I want to say it's something.
Don't tell me.
Okay.
Don't say it.
But as long as you know it, I want to say if anybody in the chat gets it.
So we got Cargo says long.
Well, in the crawl, not a long time ago. In the crawl.
So instead of we're not talking about a long time ago in the galaxy far, far away, and we're not saying Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace. The first word of the paragraph of the crawl. Just to clarify.
Yeah.
Lucky Minute says in.
Clarify that right.
The Lucky Minute says in. Is it in? Nope, not in. I feel like this is where Google's going to come in.
Yeah, exactly. And by all means, everybody can check me if you want. I have no problem with that. And I thought I checked it correct, but I could be wrong.
Dougie says turmoil. Is it turmoil?
Turmoil is correct. Yes.
There we go. Dougie gets the first point. I'll keep score.
All right. Good job, Dougie.
Well done, Dougie.
This next one again, too. You guys tell me if it's wrong or not, but good job, Dougie. That's right. Turmoil.
Well done.
Where did the Trade Federation set up camp?
All right. So where did the Trade Federation set up camp?
In other words, where were they? Where were they trying to invade?
Jeopardy. Speaking of which, Jeopardy tonight on the Disney Life for Me.
That's right. Yes.
Juan Rodriguez says Naboo.
That is correct.
That is correct. Juan Rodriguez. Well done.
This next one, if everybody was watching, probably should get this one pretty easy. What is the name of the underwater ruler in Naboo? And we said his name earlier.
Under ruler. Tomorrowland, Andy's backyard. These are great. Great answers. I love it. What is the name of the Gungan ruler?
There you go. Good job, Dougie. Dougie got it. Ball snaps.
Dougie got it. Well done, Dougie.
All right. 2 more and then we'll be done. So what actress plays Sabi? I think her name is Sabi, which is Queen Amidala's assistant, who was later killed in the movie. What actress? She's a very popular actress, and I think we mentioned her earlier in the stream. See if anybody can get her.
King Triton. I love it. Juan Rodriguez says Keira Knightley.
Got it. Good job. Very good.
So we have Dougie and Juan Rodriguez both with 2 apiece.
Jeff, you were right there, buddy. You were next. Good job.
Jeff was second with that one. So final question of episode 1.
And again, I think we mentioned her earlier. What is the name of Anakin's mother? And then I got a extra credit question.
Name of Anakin's mother.
And they do say her name.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, Melissa. You should get this one.
What is the name of Anakin's actress? Sharpie Evans. Mousel says Miss Me. I think Shmi Skywalker. I think Dougie got the most correct answer.
Well, Juan was. I mean, it's Smee. Her name is Smee. Absolutely.
Miss Smee.
Yeah. So we go I don't know if it's Miss Smee, but it's Smee. Her name is Smee. It's Shmi, isn't it?
It's spelled the way. It's spelled the way Dougie spelled it. SHMI.
Okay. All right. Cool.
I'm gonna go with Dougie on that one, but obviously these scores will be continued on till next month. Cargo says Anakin's mother is Yzma. Oh, that would be a great crossover, guys. I just want to give a massive, massive thank you to Stevesworld as our special guest. Please go check out Steve's channel. Really, really, really awesome unboxings, as well as a big Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Marvel, Disney. Big fan of all this great stuff. Thank you so much for joining us as our first special guest, talking about episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Thank you, guys. I greatly appreciate the invite, and again, you guys have some awesome channels too, and I was honored that you asked me to come join you, especially for the first one.
Well, it was great to have you back. You know, we love having you on Disney Fiasco, and again, your knowledge of Star Wars. I thought, you know, what better first guest to have than Stevesworld. And a big, big, big thank you. It's taken us a while to get this up and running, but this was so much fun. Walt from Mouse Talk. We just had such great fun. I think this is going to be a really great thing this year.
I do too. I enjoyed it a lot. It's going to be fun. It's something to look forward to each and every month. Thank you to everybody in the chat for putting up with us for 2 hours. But we enjoyed talking about the Star Wars, and we hope you guys enjoyed it too. And Dan, thanks for having me as usual. And we'll rotate next month. We'll have it on Mouse Talks channel. And I just appreciate everybody coming out. And thank you to Noah for putting the link in there. Yeah. But this was great, bud. I definitely appreciate it. Steve, go back to Steve for a second. Steve, did you want to plug anything? Anything coming up, bud?
Well, not usually. I usually just pass on that. But I will tell you that in Meg's absence on March 6th and March 13th, I will actually be live streaming. And on March 13th, Walt from Mouse Talk will be my special guest. Still working on finding a special guest on the 6th. I haven't even thought about it yet, to be honest with you. So, but yes, I will be streaming in Meg's absence for those 2 Wednesdays.
Nice.
So Wednesdays, the 6th and the 13th.
Yes, at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Will that be on the live? Will that be on the live place or?
I don't think so. But
I'll give Dean a call and we'll get you on the live place. I'll give Dean a call and you'll be on the live place so people can go check out your channel for the live streams.
Appreciate that.
No problem at all. Speaking of Dean and the live place, a big shout out to theliveplace.com, the guys who sponsor this channel and the stream and my videos. These guys just give you all your family-friendly live streams out there, such as Resort TV 1, Mouse Talk, Mickey's Magic, Stevesworld very, very soon, and myself for Disney Fiasco as well. Just so much fun. Thank you to the Live Place. Please go check them out as well. Again, a big shout out. He's probably never ever going to watch this. A big shout out to Chris Stuckmann, who gave me all the information about episode 1. Really great channel, really great video. If you want to see everything of Star Wars episode 1 jam-packed into less than 15 minutes, check in the description box down below. Please check everybody else out here on all their social media. Let's just quickly go around. Where can we find you, Stevesworld?
I'm on Instagram. I have a Facebook and I've got a Twitter, but for some reason I didn't use them forever and my Twitter got hacked. So I'm working on opening that back up. But I am on Instagram at Stevesworld Disney.
Awesome. And Mouse Talk?
Well, on YouTube, obviously, we're real close to 1,200 subscribers. I think we're 2 away from 1,200 subscribers. Yeah, so if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please do so we can hit that milestone. Couple things coming up. Mouse Madness is coming up. I've been talking about this. I'm getting all the matchups are ready. All 64 of the rides and attractions are ready to go. And it's going to be huge. And all the votes come from you guys. You make the decisions. March 1st, the tournament begins. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. Obviously, YouTube. We're all over the place. We stream Mondays. We stream Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we sprinkle in videos here and there. So we'd love for you guys to come out. We just hit 400 followers on Twitter, too.
Ooh, amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Dan, real quick, do you guys have a set schedule? I saw Stacy put this in the chat. Do you guys have a set schedule for which Sunday of the month you're going to do these on?
We don't know for sure because obviously things can change very, very quickly. We definitely know that we will be doing one a month. But what I would do is just keep following us on Twitter, Instagram, all these places where you'll find all the links. We'll make sure they'll send announcements out ready. And please make sure, I can't stress this enough, turn those notification bells on for all of our channels so you know exactly when we all go live for Mouse Madness, Disney Fiasco, and Star Wars Sunday, and all these other streams, because then you'll know that we are live. We won't know for sure, but we'll let you know during the week which Sunday we'll be doing it. But I think we didn't have a problem this week. And also, I will let you guys know on Disney Fiasco that Saturday if it's going to be the week from Sunday from that week.
Yeah, we'll try to give as much. We'll try to give as much time ahead as we can. Dan and I can talk about that this coming week to try to get some dates already scheduled, and then if we have to change, we can change to help people out, because it's good if you can know ahead of time. I agree.
And Stacey Rogers says, "Wait, Mouse Talk just hit 1,200. Did you reach 1,200? Do a check for us."
I don't know. Did we?
Did you just double check for us while you're here?
Yeah.
Did you hit 1,200?
Let me see.
Sorry,
my computer's slow. I'm slow in
Hey, Corey Rainwaters, welcome into the stream. We are actually just wrapping up. We've actually been going for 2 hours.
We hit 1,200.
Yeah, congratulations. Welcome to the 1,200 group. Well, actually, me and Steve aren't there yet. yet.
Yeah.
But welcome to the 1200 group. We'll be there very soon. But congratulations. If you haven't checked out Mouse Talk, please go check out Mouse Talk. Really awesome channel, Walt and Melissa. And please go check out Stevesworld. And I give you guys a little bit of a hint. We might all be together in August for a little food meetup, and I can't wait. This could be fun. Thank you everybody in the chat who stopped by today to talk about Star Wars. We ultimately geeked out today. Gelly's Journeys, Noah, the Simply Joys, thank you so much for stopping by. It was really good to see you. Courtney Rainwaters, Stacey Rogers, Noah, Cargo, of course, the Pickle Fan Cargo, Bax, the Lucky Minute. We also had Kate Atwood as well, Jeff from Dolwit Dad, Juan Rodriguez, Dougie, Dana was here earlier.
Rob
was here, Power Channel, Our Disney Adventures, Ohana. Wow, so many amazing channels here. So thank you guys so much for stopping by. For me, my plugs, I have another video coming out this week. Not gonna tell you what it is. It might come out either on Tuesday or Wednesday. Disney Food Fridays, Friday. Woohoo, more food. And Disney Fiasco episode 41. This Saturday, super excited, cannot wait. Guys, this was so much fun. We're gonna leave you now. It's been 2 hours. Guys, you are not my subscribers, you are my friends. Next time we will be on Walt's channel, Mouse Talk, to talk about episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
Yay.
If you thought I ranted this much, just wait till next month.
It might be 3 hours. No, it won't be.
Oh, God, no, hopefully not.
No.
Guys, live your life with a smile each and every day. May the Force be with you. And we'll see you all real soon. See you, everybody. Have a great week.
Everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank
Hugs
you.
and squishes, Cargo. Bye, everybody.